we're coming to question 2 of the 3 questions that charities have sent us to put to Heather on branding, following our cafe on branding in December. So the second question is from Age UK in Sheffield, and obviously Age UK is a national brand, but it's owned locally by local organisations. And Age UK in Sheffield are looking to create some local services. And the question that Denise and Teresa brought to the cafe was, what do they do about branding these local services that they're thinking of developing? Do they reference the national brand, or do they develop a new one? What would your advice be to them, Heather?
I think when it comes to sub-branding, the important thing is that both elements, so the core brand, in Age UK's case, the national brand, and the brand that belongs to this activity and service, both get the opportunity to play to their strengths. So if sub-branding doesn't answer that, if it doesn't allow this to reach an audience who might not engage with Age UK, or if it dilutes the value of the Age UK brand in any way at all, I think it's something to steer clear of. But equally, the value of it is in allowing you to speak to an audience that may not engage with that core brand. They might not align with it, they might not think that Age UK is relevant to them. It might allow a new audience to access Age UK. So sub-branding definitely has its value there. The vital thing is that that sub-brand is not allowed to dilute a national or a core brand. They should never appear in conflict. And I think the other thing is, if you are going to sub-brand and you are going to create a new brand for a product or service, don't allow that core brand to lose the value of that. If that then goes on to open up a whole new range of doors with different audiences, what you don't want is for them to be unaware that they're engaging with this core brand, with this other organisation, because then you start to detract from the value that has, and you also fail to create a relationship, which ultimately is what should happen through branding. So if you take an example like Cancer Research, who run the Race for Life, Race for Life, I think, is relatively kind of free. It doesn't feel, in some ways, that's a plus and a minus. It doesn't feel bound to Cancer Research UK, and I'm unsure really, generally, and I think a lot of people are, about who owns it. But it has allowed it to become a kind of phenomenon in its own right, and there has been real value for that, literally monetary value for the organisation behind it. And I think perhaps people who engage with Race for Life are aware that they're doing it for Cancer Research UK, but a lot of people who support them may just be actually aware that they're supporting someone running for somebody that they love. So that process of engagement is a different one, and sub-branding can facilitate that. You just have to be careful in managing it, that it isn't to the detriment of any of the other organisations or brands involved.
So in the case of Age UK Sheffield, I don't know what it is that they want to launch, but if it were a handyman service, it might be that somebody comes into contact with their handyman service that doesn't really have any relationship with the Age UK Sheffield core services. But what you're saying is, if they manage it right, their experience with the handyman service will give them a good impression of the core things, and they can develop that relationship on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly how it would work. And I think, that kind of way into Age UK will be a really useful thing, because you are going to be engaging with people who may not otherwise engage. It also adds huge value to that activity, to that sub-branded activity. Sticking a national brand and that national brand owning that activity will add real value to any other service that they create. The only downside, and the only real red light potential, is that the sub-brand, in terms of what it delivers and the experience it delivers, works to the detriment, because Age UK will benefit from owning that activity. Equally, if that's a poor activity, they'll own the problems that come from it. So that's the only real thing to be wary of. I think otherwise, if everyone wins, if everything gets to play to its own strengths, if it adds value in either direction, that's all good.
So in that case, they might want to pilot it with a different name, figure out that it's working really well, and then badge it up appropriately.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of thinking it through. It's just a case of thinking all the potential pros and cons through, and then going for it.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really helpful. Thanks very much, Heather.